It's Dan Povenmire and Swampy from Phineas and Ferb. You probably recognize us. So we could not do the show without you, nor would we want to.
Nice.
I'm Ari Leon. David and I have worked together on countless shows, starting back in '95 at Saban, shows like X-Men and Spider-Man, at Marvel, a slate of 8 feature films. And now we're working together on a series for ABC Saturday morning. And he's my go-to guy. We have a great time working together. We have a symbiotic relationship. And I couldn't think of a better guy for the job.
Nice.
I'm Alan Ball, the executive producer and creator of HBO's True Blood, and I've been lucky enough to work with Nathan Barr for 4 seasons now on True Blood.
Hey Wondercon, I'm Adam Horowitz.
And I'm Andy Kitsis.
We're the creators of Once Upon a Time.
If you're a fan of Once Upon a Time, then you definitely have to be a fan of Mark, because his music is definitely the heart of our show.
Wow.
Why do I feel so lost?
You are not lost. You're my son. Maybe I didn't give birth to you, but I loved you. I wanted you right from the start. Praise for the sea. Praise for the morning. Praise for them springing fresh from the
Awesome. Please give a warm welcome to our very musically talented panelists, Mr. Jim Dooley, Mark Isham, Nathan Barr, David Jacob, Robert Duncan, David Ari Leon, and Blake Neely. So delighted and honored to have with us today the amazing, most of you probably know her as Audrey from Little Shop. I know you guys at Wondercon know her from Heroes as Siler's mom, and as you just saw, it's Vivian Charles from Pushing Daisies, the incomparable Ellen Greene.
I am thrilled to be here and to be able to explore the minds of these very talented men with you. Not a bad way to spend an afternoon, I'd say. The feeling of sitting in a darkened movie theater. Everyone knows that luscious feeling. The music comes on and it fills our hearts. The music excites or frightens us and makes us cower. Makes us giggle or truly brings us to tears. Fills our heads with dreams of love or holds us and gives us solace or fills our hearts with sorrow. The picture on the screen and the music that hugs to it is a beautiful romance, one that cannot exist without the other, although the music can stand alone. It's a beautiful pas de deux. There are 3 original art forms or artists: the composer, the writer, and the painter. They deserve their due. People like me only interpret. They first have to put pen to paper. They are the brave ones. For nothing will happen until they begin to create. So let us explore the art of composing. Gentlemen, as I've told you, I love all your work, and so it was my great pleasure to learn all about you this week. Every year growing up after the summer break, I, along with every school kid, had to write a composition of what we wanted to be when we grew up. I am embarrassed to say I wrote this as my first composition. I want to be an actor, singer, dancer because you could be a witch, fairy princess, or tell someone off. What did you write that you wanted to be? And how did you first start pursuing your dream? Let's go down the line and think TV and sound bites, please. Blake, let's start with you. A cow rancher?
What's the question? Cow rancher?
What did you write what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be this, actually. I mean, not specifically I wanted to be at a table on the Wondercon panel, but I wanted to write music for the movies and for TV shows because I spent a lot of time in front of a TV. I spent a lot of time trying to play those theme songs on the piano. A lot of time in the movies. I grew up in Paris, Texas, so there's not much to do but that. So that's what I wanted to do. And I started very early trying to write music, and here I am.
And what did you write, David, in your composition?
I have to say this as well, same, but not this panel, but music. But when I was a little kid, I actually wanted to be a magician. When I was 5, I did a magic show at the YMCA and got paid $5. I was very excited.
I know, $5 is big to a kid.
Yes.
Not nowadays.
Yes, not anymore. But once I discovered music, there was no turning back. It was, okay, put the magic tricks on the shelf. I'm doing music now.
Robert?
Yeah, when I was a kid, the first piano piece I ever learned was the theme to Hill Street Blues. And from that point forward, I mean, I always had I loved TV themes, so it was quite early that I decided that this is something I wanted to pursue.
Danny?
I'm one of those people, I didn't have the big picture when I was young, like I wasn't sure what I wanted, but all I knew is that the guitar called to me, and I couldn't think much past that. I was just happy that I was able to work and play the guitar.
And your folks wanted to keep you out of trouble.
Well, that was the last place. Being a guitar player is not where you want to be if you want to be out of trouble. But as I got older, I started to songwrite, and doors started to open, and I saw the world of composing as the world I wanted to be in. It just sort of happened naturally.
Hi. For me, movies and music my whole life. I started out really directing films all the time. Get my class down to like the local cemetery and we direct horror films and stuff like that. And then I was a cellist and a guitarist. So it's always been movies and music for me from the beginning.
Acoustic cello?
Yes. So
I love the that is sax players. Mark?
I wanted to perform, I want to have a band and tour the world and play in front of thousands of adoring fans. I made it to about 100 adoring fans. I say hundreds. My mother tells me that from a very young age I used to sit at home in front of the piano and tell stories and accompany myself. So there was something in the wind there.
James?
Well, I'm the first male in 3 generations to not be a New York City fireman in my family. So naturally I wanted to be a rock star and taught him metal guitar for a long time until I realized I wasn't good enough to make a living at it, and I didn't want to lug ants around Manhattan. So I said, okay, writing's where the money's at, I'm going to go over there. But I did love it, but it was really clearly just when you realize you're not a great performer, try to express yourself in another way.
I don't even want to follow that up with a joke. Okay. Mark, gotta love a horn man. In Once Upon a Time, you have created two beautiful, crisscrossing worlds. The fairy tale land in the past and the present world in Storybook. Do you approach these two musical worlds differently? And at what point in the production process do you like to become involved, and in what way?
We become involved as soon as possible, because the episodes tend to be fairly complex. So when we are doing this, I set out to do this no differently than I would do a film, just in terms of attention and writing for full orchestra. So we like as much time as we can get, so we can get it as good as we possibly can.
Are the two worlds voiced differently, instrumentally?
Well, again, to compare it to film, I structured this project in a way I've never structured a film before. I've never found it effective in film work to give a character a theme. It's always the philosophy or the emotion or the statement of the movie that gets the betrayal or unrequited love, or whatever the movie is about, that generally gets the theme. In my approach. But this is the fairy tale world, and I've found it very effective to give each character or each relationship a theme. So we're thematically very, very complex with many little motifs, and we actually have a chart where, oh my God, those two are together, so how are we going to do that in this episode?
It's very clear.
Good.
It's beautiful. No, it's very clear. It's got such a personality unto itself. Your music is beautiful. James, Rolling Stone calls Wilfred, quote, "This is the funniest and trippiest of summer's new comedies," unquote. Regarding this edgy show, James, I have two questions for you. How did you approach writing music for a pot-smoking dog named Wilfred? And two, your dog man, Wilfred, constantly switches between fantasy and reality. How do you address that musically?
No pressure. Well, all of Wilfred is based around this whistling tune, which I came up with. I mean, like, how do you call your best friend? This is Ryan's relationship with Wilfred. Like, he would whistle for the dog. Obviously, they hang out and drink and smoke cigarettes and pot, so this was a way of kind of going back to what the original relationship would be. And going between reality and the fantasy, Wilfred, was what's kind of interesting, I guess. I think in a lot of our compositional processes, we pick out instruments that are new to us, and for Wilfred, I recorded a lot of instruments that were broken. Out of tune, I found an auto harp that was left in a garage for I don't know how many years, and it's out in a really unique way. Not like if you detune an instrument, like you can tell like somebody did it, but if it's just been sitting around, it has kind of a unique thing to it. So that and lots of doggy toys and children's toys. So like, they're like little squeaks, and like the little the xylophone that's in there is not like a real one; it's a little toy one that you can get at kids' stores. So between that and the whistling, it's like that's
I can't whistle.
Neither can I.
Robert, I just saw your very exciting missing, which is quite intense and thrilling. But I want to ask you about Castle. It rides a fine line between a cop drama and a comedy. How difficult do you find keeping the lightheartedness in a story without shortchanging the depth of the drama? And, in addition to writing music, how do you use silence to support the narrative?
Well, in Castle, there's a musical agility that's called for when people are telling jokes over a dead body, and I do find that this show in particular, different producers have different feelings about how active music should be, how much it should sting, and how much it should turn. And these particular producers like the music to turn a lot, and I think that's founded in the fact that it has to straddle the two worlds of being funny, making you feel scared and horrified, but then also making you laugh.
What about silence? How do you choose that? And how do you decide?
What's interesting is I feel like a lot of the shows that I've worked on have been musically heavy. In a 42-minute show, quite often I'm scoring over 34, 35 minutes of music. So there isn't a lot of silence. And my personal preference is for more silence. I really appreciate a movie or a show that really makes you, where the story and the acting and the writing earn the music. And when the music finally kicks in, it really has an impact. I find a lot of the shows, they ask from the top to have quite a lot of music. So my favorite use of silence is just to let this bring you to the brink of tears with the acting and the writing, and then let the music finish you off, so to speak.
Be silent before the setup, after the joke, come in with the music.
Right.
Blake, I love your charming, no ordinary family, and it focused on superheroes living in suburbia with newly found powers. How different was it to score a show like this compared with your shows with more classic patterns, like the captivating Pan Am or the Mentalist, or say, the tremendously loved Brothers and Sisters?
No Ordinary Family was actually not as difficult, because my feeling with it was, let's just give them an ordinary action score, superhero score. But then when I got into the show and found out there was going to be a lot of comedy, I thought, well, let's do it like one of my heroes, Elmer Bernstein, where it's always infused with comedy, but it's playing it straight. So even when he's running across a building and trying out spandex for the first time, it's like I give him a serious, but then there's something I tried to always have, and even the serious cues, it was comedic. Like, Elmer would do in Stripes and Airplane. I mean, they're very serious scores, but they're scoring pretty absurd moments. So that's kind of what I did. That was my approach with it. And the more familiar you were with, oh yeah, we're in superhero land, you could then sort of forget the music and watch what was happening.
Danny, in connection with your delightful Phineas and Ferb, I heard you described as a vintage rocker at heart. A very cool description, I might add. But that you are still able to make the style appeal to kids, a rare skill, unquote. Can you talk about the decision to use song as a primary storytelling device, and how on earth do you come up with new songs weekly and perform it too?
Well, Phineas and Ferb is a very song-driven show, and I do about 10% of the songwriting. The show creators write probably 80-90% of the songs. It's Dan and Swampy, but I arrange, produce, and play all the instruments, and it's my bread and butter. I've been like a song producer for the last 30 years. So after the songs are done, I just go into the world of underscore, and I already forgot the question. But I know it has something to do with songs.
How do you with all those songs?
They send me a song every weekend, maybe two, and 6 months before the episode comes out, and then I just go crazy on them. And sometimes they're like orchestrated songs about going to war. Sometimes they're little love songs between the characters. Sometimes they're like hard rock songs.
How long does it take you to do one song?
I try to, well, if it's a rock song, I knock it out in one day. If it's a big show tune, I'll spend more time on it. We do a lot of show tunes. Dr. Doofenshmirtz is way into singing show tunes. If you see the show. So that I study a lot of my favorite orchestrators, and I'll spend maybe a weekend on it.
Nathan, as an aside, I heard the wrong person. Nathan, as an aside, I heard you like Harold and Maude, and I love you for that. With acting, when rehearsing a scene, directors sometimes utilize improvisation to open the actor up and free them creatively. Nathan, your musical style is so passionate and versatile, as seen in the haunting True Blood. Can you tell us, how do you utilize improvisation to find the heart of a scene and instill in us the emotions you and the writer-director want us to feel as an audience?
Sure. So basically, I don't like to read the scripts. I get the scripts before the episode comes out, And I don't even watch the episode until we spot, so I have a very immediate reaction to the show, like as a fan, because I love the show. And I take the same approach when I'm writing. I just sit there and watch the show and pull an instrument off the wall and literally improvise. I don't use click usually, so I'll just hit record and then I'll just start playing.
On what instrument?
Cello or guitar or piano or prepared piano or a whole bunch of different ones. Yeah, a whole bunch of ones. And that's how I tap in, because I'm sitting there as a fan, and instead of talking about how it's affecting me, I'm actually playing it live with the scene that's going on. And once I get one instrument performance that I like through, then I layer it.
A suggestion, it would be wonderful to one day see a live demonstration. On the spot. No performance anxiety. David, you've worked on such classic TV shows such as Spider-Man and the Hulk. These worlds the writers have created come from their imagination, but your music must reflect these imaginary worlds and help us believe in them and make it real for us. How big of a challenge is it to bring these characters, places, and storylines to life?
It's big. No, actually it's really, it's organic for me because I grew up loving superheroes like Spider-Man and Superman and Incredible Hulk, and having had the opportunity to write music for them is really thrilling for me. And I think there's something about the hero story that resonates for all of us, that they get to the hero status by having to rise above the challenges, and that piece of me that loves to be inspired by the triumph of will, that emotion is what gets brought out, and to bring that to life is awesome. It's a great honor.
Wow. Where are we time? Yeah? Can I keep going on to the second round? All right. Blake and Nathan, you know that famous story, Hitchcock saying to Kim Novak at the fireplace on a close-up, turn your head, I believe it was to the left, and then he inserted this footage into the film in a particular place in the drama, and it had such an impact. So, I was watching Pan Am, and watching a simple bit of footage. Characters were just coming down a staircase, and it got me thinking, do you ever think about how much power you wield? I mean in a good way. How much you influence my work, I mean, well, the work on the screen, and can alter the perception of a performance, making it frightening, heart-pounding, mysterious, sentimental, even funny or good, or dare I say, the opposite. Why don't you go, Blake?
I do realize the power I wield because most of you hate me when you meet me at cast parties.
I know.
Well, most of the actors and actresses on the shows, when they meet me, they say, "Oh," and they'll say, "Oh, see, I didn't really play that scene that way." And I said, "Yeah, I know, but now you do." I remember meeting Rachel Griffiths, and she said that scene wasn't funny, and I said, but that's what they wanted, so I made it funny. So, and actually, when I did my first show, Everwood, I'd written this main title theme that I was very proud of. Everyone was happy with, and I met Tree Williams, the star, at a party, and he said, "Oh, you're Blake Neely." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, you do the music?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, I missed that song we used to have as the opening."
Oh.
So I just turned around and got some cheese on my crackers, and he tapped me on the shoulder and said, Did I say something to offend you? I said, "No, I just wish you'd said you liked the new theme song, but that's I digress out of anger. What was the question?"
Sorry, I have a donkey laugh. Embarrassing. It comes out.
But I do realize there's some power, and
It is, but you can also make a horrible performance really wonderful.
yeah, and that's the fun. I don't like making performances horrible, but I do like, because when we see these shows and films, there's usually some type of music in there already. They call it temp music.
Yeah.
And it's usually very
And the director
obvious.
loves it, right?
They love it, and it's very obvious. It's very on the nose. It tells you exactly what. And they're basically just piling onto the scene, and I like to. I think all of us like to find what's missing from the scene.
Exactly.
And add that. And
But
so
you're
it's really
composers,
fun when we
those
can.
are not composers.
What's that?
You compose, there's a difference.
Yeah, some of us just pose, but anyway.
I should stop you on that. That was a very
Stop
good
me.
exit line. Nathan.
I don't know how to follow that, but I think the best way to approach a show is, like with Alan Ball is very happy with the performances generally in the show, so oftentimes it's more about me staying out of the way.
Right.
And just a little bit of influence here and there, because the performances generally are really good.
But you don't stay out of the way. You're gorgeous.
Well, thank you.
All right, you stop. That's good. My friends Howard Ashman and Alan Menken used to get up every day and work. Yeah, keep Howard's name out there. They had a very structured working schedule. Give us an example of your short day in the life of a composer. And this is to James and then Mark.
There's two different kinds of days I have. There's the kind of the experimental day where, like, for Wilfred, making instruments, collecting things, and editing sounds and trying to find them. And then there's the actual work day when I have to get stuff done because it's due in 2 days. And I do it really regimented because that's the only way I can keep focused. Mm-hmm. And I worked with Hans Zimmer for so long that his process is so much just experimenting and taking so much time. And I like to go home. So instead of an 18-hour hangout day and I can experiment. We've come up with great things, but that's not my process. At 8:30 I start writing, and I write till 1, and then I have lunch from 1 to 1:30, and then I write until dinner. And that's usually that. If I sit at home, I have a pad of score paper, and I just come up with ideas, I'll write it down and get to it the next day. Wow. So that way I can have a little bit more of a social life.
Yes.
Than I used to.
Because you spend most of the time
in the
alone.
past 13 years.
Mark?
Start about 9:30. My wife has insisted that my studio be on the property.
Yes, because she wants to see you.
I'd never see me. I'd never see the kids. A short day is probably come back after dinner for a couple hours. A long day is 2:30, 3 in the morning.
Yeah, from the morning.
Yeah, and pretty much, well, because I'm doing the television show, plus I have a movie
or two.
Jobs or two.
So
at the
is
same
it
time,
6
so
day?
there's a lot of 2 a.m.
Is it a 6-day turnaround that you have 6 days to compose?
On the television show, it's been 6 days for the last 5 episodes. We're going to get a week off, so we'll manage to grab 2 10-day episodes. But then it gets back to the 6 day.
It's crazy. Danny, Robert David, I am always using phrases to inspire my musical partners, such as make this a taffy pull, or I want this to have an innocence, a vulnerability, and he looks at me and he wants to say, huh? How do you go about turning a phrase from a director, producer, writer into a musical moment? Why don't you start at Danny?
Well, first of all, with Phineas and Ferb, I'm in this little bubble of talented people that have incredible taste in music and aren't afraid for me to experiment, and if they like it, they have no egos about that. They just want the best music. So, like my fellow peers have been saying, they'll temp everything. Like the latest episode I did, they temped with John Williams. It's for the Phineas fans, if you remember the Chronicles of Meat, this is going to be called Meatless in Seattle. It's a continuation of the Meat character, and they temped it with John Williams. So they want that kind of thing. So I pretty much have my marching orders on some of those money scenes, and then when we go back to the main characters, we have James Bond. One of the characters carry the platypus, so I know I need to go into that world of James Bond, or another character is a sweet little girl named Isabella, and I know I need to go into an innocent world, kind of like you were in Little Shop of Horrors. Sweet girl. So I get my marching orders pretty well from my people on Phineas and Ferb.
And the next is Robert, and then David.
I think it's, in some ways, it's one of the more daunting aspects of the job to translate producer language into musical language. The famous quote is talking about music is like dancing about architecture. Once I was working on when you find something that works, so it can be the most rewarding part. I remember working on a cop show pilot that took place in the Bronx, and I got a very brief call from 20th Century Fox. It just said, "We want this all Bronx cop music." and they hung up. And I was just scratching my head for a few minutes thinking, well, where do I find a Bronx Cop CD? Or what is, what deep
Walk around New York.
legacy, right. So, and I actually hadn't been to New York that much at that point in time, but I did sit back and think on my last trip to New York, I was quite hypnotized almost by the street musicians that played on paint buckets. I found that it was an engrossing type of music, and doing a little bit of research, I found that actually bucket drumming had been invented in the Bronx. And I found a YouTube video of the guy that did it, so I thought I pitched this angle to them. How about bucket drumming? And they loved it. And that was, so then it turned into something very satisfying, but it is a big challenge.
23 takes later. I know. And David?
Well, yeah, so sometimes you do get things with temp music, and that gives you a roadmap. If it's somebody I've worked with a lot, like Eric, who did the little shout-out, I basically, when he says I want something to have more drama or to be more sad, I know what his taste is, so I can kind of cater it to the person, if that makes sense.
Right, but you know, they may be using verbiage that doesn't make sense, but you know them.
I know them, yeah, that's right. I mean, there are some instructions that musically, it's almost like a vocabulary that's natural. Like if somebody says, I want a sense of wonder, there's a certain scale that, like, you play it and instantly you go, ooh, it kind of evokes that feeling. But, some things, if it's somebody I haven't worked with before and it's ambiguous, like exactly what they mean, I'll try to hone in and can you say a little bit more about that? Because I've thought I knew what people meant a lot and done it, and they've gone, well, no, that's not quite what I meant.
Because they're not talking in musical terms. It's confusing to a musician.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. But, I mean, that is part of our job to kind of puzzle through that. Once you have a character for the music for a show, then you have a context that you can try to grab the emotion from.
And when you walk away, you roll your eyes?
Sometimes.
Where are we with time? Okay, how much? Do I have to go to the end or no?
Plenty.
25? Whoa, guys, you're getting my questions. Where was I? All right. Blake, you wear so many hats. And I know you work with my friend Ellen Greene, who I just mentioned, on Enchanted. Can you talk about some of your experiences of conducting other people's work? And also, Blake, I know nowadays composing music works much with samples. Can you tell us how does working with live musicians impact your musical and dramatic choices?
Okay, so first part, conducting other people's music is something I absolutely love, and I thought I would, once I started writing my own scores, would sort of get out of it and be like, oh, I'm too good to work with other people's music, but it's like, it's my performance side, is it's making music, and it takes a lot of pressure off to stand up in front of, I know it sounds like a lot of pressure to stand in front of 100 people playing, but to not have the responsibilities of I wrote this, is it good, you're just going for a good performance, and you're working with the best of the best, no matter where you are, if you're in LA or London or Prague.
Do you get to pick the musicians, or does the
I have before, but usually it's a set. The same musicians kind of work with the same composers. But it's just more about making a great piece of music that you aren't feeling like, oh, I should have made that in F sharp, I should have that kind of thing, or how's it working with the scene. And also, for the most part, I've gotten to work with some real heroes of mine, like Alan and Hans Zimmer and Michael Kamen.
Do they give you room to interpret their music, or since you're a composer yourself?
Some do. Next question. No, they do. It's a collaboration, or they wouldn't bring you back. And I've conducted for people once and not come back, and for whatever reason. But they can handle they're working with the director in the booth, and you're working with the musicians, and there's a lot of talk back and forth. But ultimately, if you're conducting, you just want to make it right for them. It came out of their head, and as a composer, I can understand that.
As a composer, how important is the engineer?
Extremely important.
Exactly.
Extremely important. And most of us, I think, use the same engineer because it's this dark art, and once they figure out what you're going for, it's a great person in your team to just say, do it like, make it sound like this, or make it sound like we did last time. So, and it's someone that has your back, too.
What about samples and real musicians?
Well, samples are your friend and your enemy. Having just come off of a show like Pan Am, which I pitched as an orchestral score, and they said, that's a great idea, but we're not paying for any musicians. So
it sounded
samples,
like flying.
Well, samples you have to get your head around because sometimes you just don't have the budget, you don't have the time, you don't have, it takes, you get 6 days on a TV show to write the music, record it, turn it in, to also notate that, go before a live orchestra, record it with them. It's just a whole nother set. But I think your question was, how does it help you working with live musicians to work with samples? And
The impact, your musical and dramatic choices, how the difference, which one, live musicians versus samples. Everybody likes live musicians, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we agree on that. Can I move on?
Yes.
Danny, Mark. I get to ask you this question. I asked them backstage. It was like, okay, at what age did you pick up your instrument? I don't think I phrased that right. Do you still perform live? Oh, am I going to get kicked out? Do you still perform live? And do you miss it? Danny first.
I really like you. I picked up the guitar at probably around the age of 12, and I fell in love with it. That answers that question pretty succinctly.
Do you miss?
Do
you still perform? Do you miss it?
All I did was play live my whole, and my biggest goal was to tour. So all through the 90s, I toured with Bette Midler and George Michael and
Elton John. George Michael.
And I do miss it. And so I got so mad at myself because I was starting to feel like a hack. I'm not playing anymore. That I put a band together, and it was so much work. It made me miss my TV gig because
it's hard.
And we all have schedules and deadlines, but it really sharpened me, forcing myself to play with great players again. So I highly recommend it, because if I'm going to be a guitar player, I got to play.
Yes, Mark, you're such a gorgeous player.
Thank you. I started playing piano. Very, very young. I don't even remember. My mother's a professional violinist, so there was always instruments in my house. She stuck a violin in my hand probably around 5 or 6. And I was pretty good, but I couldn't learn a good vibrato. And then I saw at a rehearsal that she took me to, I finished my homework and I was wandering around the back of the orchestra, and I noticed these guys in the back that had the meatball sandwiches next to them, eating lunch, and they'd pick up a horn and play really loud, and I thought that was like the coolest thing. So I started playing trumpet, and it took over my life for a long, long time. It's a very physical instrument. It's, I think, professional sports, professional dancing, and trumpet playing are really on the same level of a physical commitment. And if you put it down for a couple of weeks, piano, you can let your hand fall on the keys, the sound will come out. If you put the trumpet down for 2 weeks, you can't get a sound out of it. So I miss it, but I don't miss the frustration of not practicing and then trying to play.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't miss, the 4 hours on an airplane, the 6 hours in an airport, in a funky hotel room in exchange for an hour and a half of performance.
And it's frightening. I just did a show, and because people are always asking me, and I'm going to go back into clubs again, but it does, if you have a very strong heart, to say, okay, I'm going to open it up again, and I can't lie, so, and neither can musicians, you never can, because you either play music or you don't, or you play badly, I
When was
suppose,
the
but-
first time you first picked up your instrument?
I got picked up. No. Well, I always wanted to sing. I sang with my family in the choir. But I'm not being interviewed here. Excuse me. I felt that one. How are we doing on time? Should I go? Yeah, okay. I know that's my girlfriend, Kristen. She helped me. She's from Pushing Daisies. Yeah, she worked in... I know all of you are used to finding the clock, so here goes. When you're working on a show and shooting runs behind, since you are one of the last to get the footage and knowing the show's air date is set in stone, how do you deal with that pressure down the line? Go, James.
For example, the worst of it that it's ever been, ever, was pushing Daisies, and it was 42 minutes every 6 days, and I had a clock, and I had to do 30 seconds every hour to make it a 16-hour writing day, and then I'd get revisions.
And we were behind.
Yeah, and then, so that would be 6 days. 7th day, morning, we'd be watching the next week's episode, conduct the previous ones at night, and then start the clock again. So it's literally just watching the clock, and you're like, okay, when you get to that 30 seconds, like on that hour, it's like you have to move on.
Mark?
Yeah, we just have a big calendar in the studio. We have all the big job dates in red. We work everything backwards with a series of targets. If I look around and see that I'm not on, or people in the studio aren't on, it's crack the hood time, and everybody goes home until the target's met.
Wow.
But it's part of my job also is just to work it through so that we don't get in trouble. Just to get all the materials that I need, that the orchestrators need, that everybody on the team needs.
Be a good leader.
Be a good executive and a good leader. I have a team to do this. I can't do this all by myself. So
And stay organized.
And just stay really organized, and everybody has exactly what they need, and they have access to me, and I have access to the producers. And so the chain of communication is really, really clear. I mean, that's the main thing, the communication all the way down from Adam and Eddie down to the guy who carries the score into the recording session has to be just efficient, clean, works.
Nathan?
I used to really be scared of deadlines, and now I sort of need them, and I get a lot of my best work done when I start getting that pit in my stomach because it's coming up and I haven't done anything yet.
Under pressure.
Yeah, 5 minutes before the meeting or something, I'll come up with something that works really well.
Really? Wow. I have that much time? Take your time now, then, guys. I have more questions. Go. Danny?
This week would be the most intense. This is the perfect question for me because this week, tomorrow I have to be.
Do you want to make us feel guilty that you're sitting at the panel?
No.
I am Jewish.
So am
I'm in touch with my guilt.
I'm totally guilty. I have to be at Disney tomorrow with that episode that has to sound like John Williams. I didn't have a song done until 2 days ago, and I had my go-to singer, who happens to be sitting right there, Laura Dickinson, come over and sing for 5 hours for me.
Raise your hand. Hi, Laura.
Amazing. And I agreed to play mandolin on my son's performance of Fiddler on the Roof at his high school. So,
My grandfather would have loved you. He played mandolin.
Really?
His name was Dooley.
Well, I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to
He's
meet
no
him.
longer here.
Well, my mom's around. She's going to get to see her grandson in the show. And I have to turn this episode, and that's to sound like John Williams. So
which is priority?
All of them. I'm just running on fumes, but I'm in a good mood because I love what I do. You know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's been nonstop. There's no schedule. It's just always stay in the room.
No procrastination.
No, this is one of those weeks. And then other weeks, I'm sure we all agree, other weeks can be like easier and not so hard, but not this week.
So glad to meet you on this week then. Robert?
Actually, Danny's writing right now, and we're all helping him between questions.
I told you it sounds like a donkey. I started to laugh very late in life. Not wrong.
I always felt that it was a funny combination, writing music under an extreme deadline. It always felt like a round peg in a square hole, or a square peg in a round hole, whichever. Because there is, I feel it's like writing poetry or something. It could be, if you're inspired and things are flowing, it could be the simplest thing in the world, and if you're in a super critical mood, it can be the hardest thing in the world. And yet, I find myself obsessed with trying to figure out my formula. And I'm not the only one. When I first got a job working with another composer, he said, "How fast are you?" And I was ready. I said, "Well, I tried it I try to work on, every 3 hours I try to put out a minute of music, and you laugh, and said you're going to get a lot faster as you get busier, and it's very true.
You said something I thought was interesting. You said that as long as you have something to eat and enough rest. Is that it?
That's true. I do find there is an instinctive part of composing music. I find that there's often almost a little character in my head that suggests things or that I listen to. It's half my imagination, I think, as I write. I imagine something and I listen to it and I follow it. And if I am overtired, if I'm done, I can want to keep working. But once 2 o'clock rolls around, that little voice goes to sleep.
Is it good to daydream?
Is it good to daydream?
When you're composing?
I think so. I've heard other composers say that after a long nap, ideas start flowing, and almost like you put the puzzle in the machine and then wait for it to digest and come out the other end. But yeah, I think I allocate about 2 hours for every minute of music, and it's unfortunate that we have to stick to that tight
because you want to stay artistic and say, leave me alone, let me create.
I'd love to daydream more. And I find the more time I have, the more chance I have to rewrite something. When schedules are really tight, once something meets my own approval the first time, I have to usually let it go. But
Do you go into museums or looking at artwork or looking at something artistic that's in another realm help?
It's funny, I do have a habit sometimes of, for some reason, watching a movie in a completely other genre than what I'm working on. For some reason, I find that opens my mind up. I have no idea why. I haven't figured that out yet.
Well, we'll ponder it. David?
Yeah, you picked a good week for me too on this. I am scoring a new show that's going to premiere on ABC on April 7th.
Oh, that's the next grouping. Tell us what you're going to be doing the next one.
Oh, sorry. But, okay.
Stay with the deal with the pressure.
Take two.
The pressure.
So, the pressure. So, all right. The
you
pressure.
Scream, you shout, you blow into a bag.
So we're going to get a locked cut of the show on Friday, and then I have to have the music delivered on Monday. So I'm going to have like 2.5, 3 days with the final cut of the show.
Are we taking your time?
I'm composing in my head too now. So it can feel like a lot of pressure, and it is. But what I've learned over time is that the upside of that is that the producers don't have time to drive you crazy because there's not enough time to go back and forth. So everyone knows it's going to be done at this point, and then there's nothing else anyone can say. So, like, typically, when producers have time to drive you crazy, I don't know if there are any producers in the room.
Yes, they have to accept it. You have your say.
Yeah.
Because
that's just how it
their
goes.
back is against the wall.
Right. So that's the upside of it. But yeah, it can be tricky and tough.
Blake?
They all said what I was going to say, so.
All right, Blake.
No, I'm kidding. I have a lot to say now. They just kind of pissed me off.
Say something inspired or we'll move on.
No, I think I was going to say that actually in this
busy, and I'm also scoring a game for EA, and I can't say what that title is.
Okay. Blake?
Finishing the 4th season of The Mentalist. We just got picked up for 5th season.
Cool.
So those games continue. And then I've got 4 new shows coming, but the one that you in the room will be excited about, hopefully, is Green Arrow TV series for next year. So that'll be a lot of fun.